Turks, Jake Uger, Anna Kasparian with you guys on a lovely day in America. Are we gonna have fun doing the news? Yeah. Are we gonna call BS on politicians? Yeah, betcha. In fact, speaking of the original, yeah, betcha, Sarah Palin versus AOC. Is that throwdown happening later today? Yeah, betcha.
I kind of miss Sarah Palin. I don't know where she's been. Seems like she'd been dipping out, Maybe she's got other things to be concerned with, but she's come back to educate us all about what it means to take a pounding. So
look, it's not our words, it's her words. You'll see later. I think she had a falling out with the second dude. Or the potential second dude. And so, but we lost track of that soap opera. Great to see a new season.
You can't put lipstick on a pig, don't you know?
Yeah.
So we'll get to that later.
All right, we're in a fun, goofy mood. So let's do Biden fails.
Yes, fun. All right. Voting rights activists and organizers out of the state of Georgia decided to boycott President Joe Biden's speech on voting rights in Atlanta today. And I think they had a good reason for doing so. But rather than putting words in their mouths, why don't we hear from Cliff Albright, who is with Black Voters Matter? Listen to the harsh critique he has for President Biden in this clip.
We don't need another speech from the president. He gave a very passionate speech, not only the one that he gave for the commemoration last week of January 6th, but remember, he gave a very passionate speech back in Philadelphia, back in July. But then literally for 7 months, we heard nothing else about voting rights from him. And so now is not the time for another speech. And to be clear, we believe in using the presidency as a bully pulpit. We would have loved if the president used the presidency as a bully pulpit for the past 7-8 months while we've been fighting for voting rights, even getting arrested outside of the White House, begging him to do so. But at this point, we don't need another speech. We don't need him to come to Georgia and use us as a prop. What we need is work. And we're out working too, because there are attacks going on against Georgia voters and Georgia organization happening right now.
I have to say that statement was it was a relief to hear it. It was cathartic because far too often the Democratic Party, Democratic leadership, in this case, President Joe Biden, claim that they're gonna fight for certain things and then fail to do so. And then some of the more avid supporters expect you to fall in line and support them during midterm elections, during general elections, despite their failures. And here you have, Cliff Albright, who uses the word props. We don't want to be used as props. And I think it's important to really send that message to not just the Biden administration, but to the Democratic Party that seems to think that it's totally okay to take votes from certain demographics for granted. And it's also something that I want to bring up in the context of the last general election, because despite the, horrendous one and only term of the Trump administration, and despite all of the terrible rhetoric, divisive rhetoric that would come out of that man's mouth, he actually increased his vote among the Black electorate. And Democrats are like, well, we don't know why that happened. Why did that happen? Could it be that the Democratic Party has taken the Black vote for granted for quite some time now? And there are consequences to that, Cenk, something that you talk about quite often.
Yeah, so first on Cliff Albright, I just have 2 words: preach it. That was just picture perfect. I love that he added, look, we're not against using the bully pulpit. We're totally in favor of that, but stop with the endless photo ops. Do something, for God's sake, do something. And Democrats for the last 40 years have substituted marketing for actual action. And they've been aided and abetted by corporate media. But these days, media is mixed, right? Before they had a complete monopoly. Now, social media tears them apart, rightfully so. And they catch all sorts of feelings. But it's harder to do that against these groups. So when these groups come out and say, yeah, we're tired of your nonsense excuses, it's harder for them to go, oh my God, these progressives are terrible. Media, just ignore them, right? Well, you can't do that. So I love that Cliff Albright and others had the courage to do this. And honestly, more than that, like, it's great, but their frustration is palpable and appreciated.
And we're gonna hear from many other people as well who share that frustration. But I wanna go to the second part of this interview with Cliff Albright, because he was read an excerpt from the speech that Joe Biden gave today. And I was curious to see what his reaction to that would be. Let's watch.
Let me just read once again what he is going to say today. The next few days, when these bills come to a vote, will mark a turning point in this nation. Will we choose democracy over autocracy, light over shadow, justice over injustice? I know where I stand. I will not yield. I will not flinch. I will defend your right to vote in our democracy against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So the question is, where will the institution of the United States Senate stand? What more could he do?
Well, a couple of things he could do. One is that we need him not only to give that speech and to talk about the filibuster and to give a clear plan. It's one thing for you to say, I'm open to filibuster changes, right? That's what he said up until now. He has not given a full-throated call for them to modify the filibuster. He's not yet done what he did for infrastructure. When he went to Congress and met with the members of the House, he didn't go to those members and say, you know what, I'm open to infrastructure. You know, if infrastructure is necessary, I can go along with that. What he said was pass this bill and pass it now. He's not done that in regards to voting rights.
Now, of course, the bipartisan infrastructure bill was favored by some Republicans in Congress, but more importantly, by corporations. And so that, of course, took priority in regard to passage of any legislation. But I love what he said there. I think this was such a great interview, and it was so important to hear these frustrations and for activists and organizers on the issue of voting rights to vocalize the concerns they have about Biden and whether or not he's really fighting for voting rights. Look, it's not good enough for Biden to just simply say like, oh, I support doing away or reforming the filibuster. He said the same thing about his own social spending bill, the Build Back Better agenda. Did he fight for it? Doesn't look like it. That legislation is done with. It's been shelved. Did he use any sticks as opposed to carrots in regard to dealing with Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin? Of course he didn't. All he had was complimentary commentary about them whenever reporters asked about where Build Back Better was. But on the topic of the voting rights bill, yeah, how the hell would that pass unless you actually have a plan in place to do away with the filibuster, have a carve out for the filibuster or for the Voting Rights Act, or reform the filibuster? He has no plan. He hasn't specified what he plans to do. He just, in his speech today, simply said that he's in favor of reforming it so there could be passage for voting rights. It's just, It's so sad and it's so boring at this point, and everyone can see through it.
Yeah, so understand that the only reason we're doing this story is because of the opposition. Because Joe Biden restating his theoretical agenda that he doesn't give a damn about is not news. It's BS marketing that the rest of the press covers as if it's real. Pass it or don't pass it. Don't tell me about how you're kind of trying to pass it. And Cliff Albright is my new favorite person because it was such a great answer. When it was the corporate-backed infrastructure bill, Joe Biden was up in people's business. I mean, he was threatening progressives significantly behind the scenes. I'm very aware of that, right? Man, when it comes to progressives, Joe Biden can fight. I mean, all of a sudden he remembers the corn pop days, right? But when it comes to voting rights and sticking up for not just his most loyal voting base, but my God, African Americans that have been that need this. But by the way, all of us need it, right? And for democracy, can't be found, missing in action. So I love that Albright's not having any of it. I'll give Berman for doing the credit. I appreciate that. It's a rare thing to see in corporate media. At the same time, I mean, it's such a classic CNN news anchor. Like, what more could Biden do? I mean, what do you guys want? This guy has already said words. Empty words have been said and you're still not satisfied?
Now, as much as we love and appreciate Cliff Albright, he is not the only voting rights activist who is voicing his concerns about the Biden administration and the lack of action in getting the passage for that bill. I want to read a few quotes, starting with Phi Nguyen, who is the executive director of Asian Americans Advancing Justice Atlanta. He addressed the president and vice president saying, quote, "We beg you to stay in Washington tomorrow." This was a quote from yesterday, "because we don't need you here in Georgia." Well, Biden didn't listen. He did travel to Atlanta to give the speech. He continues to say, "We need legislation that will ensure that our democracy accurately reflects the growing diversity of this state and of this country. Mr. President and Madam Vice President, we beg you to ground that plane the same way that we continue to beg you to ground the planes of so many of our community members who are being deported because we still lack a pathway to citizenship." I like that comment because he killed two birds with one stone there. He not only called out the Biden administration for its inaction on voting rights, but also drew attention to the fact that in regard to immigration policy, there has been virtually no change from what we experienced under the Trump administration. And I want to go to one more video here. This is actually a snippet from an interview you did, Cenk, with Reverend Green. And I thought the framing of your question was perfect. So let's take a quick look at that.
Did you ever think that you would have to go on a hunger strike to get President Biden to do the bare minimum that he promised during the campaign?
No, I did not think. As soon as the president was elected, he said that he would have our back. He's speaking to African Americans on the night of his election. He said, "I would have your back." And here we are, years later, a year later, waiting on the president to have our back, waiting on the president to stand firm as the president to address the nation in the midst of the civil war that we're finding ourselves in, which is a crisis of our democracy. And so we have been waiting long enough. And so we hope that at this moment that the president would hear the voice of moral leadership that is crying out like blood cries out from the ground, willing and hoping for a transformation and to protect our social democracy.
And just to reiterate, this isn't about the president giving enough speeches on the issue. It's about putting action behind his words. Simply saying that he supports something or simply saying that he wants to reform the filibuster clearly doesn't go far enough in ensuring that we do what's necessary to protect voting rights in this country.
Yeah, so Reverend Green, by the way, is the head of the Black faith leaders, and 25 of them, including Reverend Green, are on a hunger strike right now. So you've got Black Voters Matter, you got faith leaders in the Black community all saying, "I've had enough. We've all had enough of empty promises from Democrats who only deliver for their donors and never deliver for their voters." Guys, you have to understand, I thought $15 minimum wage was the bare minimum. I assumed they would do voting rights. I assumed they would strip out their anti-corruption parts and at least do voting rights. If they're not even gonna do that, and they haven't in over a year, and that means they're, let's put it this way. You shouldn't take anything a Democratic leader says seriously until they prove otherwise. When you hear them speaking, you should assume they're lying because that has been their track record definitively over the last 40 years. So enough of their crap, pass something, otherwise shut up already.
And I want to give credit to a few other people before we wrap up this story. Let's go to the last graphic here. So family members of Martin Luther King Jr. have also spoken out. Last month, for instance, Martin Luther King III, his wife, Waters King, and their daughter, Yolanda Renee King, called for no celebration of MLK Day without the passage of voting rights legislation. So even they're speaking out, and I love to see it, because really, if we don't apply pressure, we're not gonna see any change. We're gonna continue seeing inaction by the Biden administration and Democratic leadership. And really, guys, the point that, I wanna buttress Cenk's point about Democrats lying. Listen, whatever piece of legislation they introduce or try to promote is completely irrelevant unless they have a plan in place to either reform or do away with the legislative filibuster in the Senate, which requires 60 senators to vote in favor of something in order for it to pass. If they don't have a plan in place for that, then I'm not interested in hearing what their proposals are. I know, and they know, that those proposals are going nowhere, and I'm not interested in doing positive marketing for them when they don't really have a real plan in place.
Yeah, and we have to keep clarifying that because in American media, corruption is so significant that if you're not doing marketing for one party or another, people look at you like, wait, are you guys journalists? I mean, how come you're not doing marketing for one of the parties in the system? No, you morons, you're supposed to challenge them. You're supposed to afflict the comfortable. You're supposed to question them. And they haven't done any of that. By the way, I'll give more shout outs to the good guys though. Ben Jealous, who's now head of the People for the American Way, former head of NAACP, League of Women Voters. They're out there getting arrested, doing civil disobedience to get the Democrats to do the bare minimum. Their donors are now rich with trillions of dollars in pork, but still as they gorge on all of that, they can't do the bare minimum for their voters. Anyone who's not telling you that they're liars is part of the problem. And you can know it definitively because there are things like that Biden can take executive action on that he clearly promised, like getting rid of $10,000 in student debt, that he's choosing not to do. He doesn't have the Manchin excuse. He doesn't have the parliamentarian excuse. I bring that example to you guys so you understand both in voting rights and everything he's talking about. It's not that he can't do it. It's that he doesn't want to do it. He was lying all along.
When we come back from the break, we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the alleged rampant insider trading taking place in Congress. We've got some new data on that you do not want to miss. So come right back. I'll share that story and more when we return.
All right, back on the social break here. Let's go to members first, as usual. Lend me a hammer for the change machine. Says that CNN news actor looked super uncomfortable, which I enjoyed watching. Here. Look, guys, we do real news, so credit where credit is due and discredit where discredit is due. I've seen John Berman do some good interviews. I've also seen him be a cable news actor. So at least he's a mixed bag. That's probably as good as it gets on cable. But yeah, there he was like, whoa, are you saying the Democrats are not taking action? Dun, breaking news, which by the way, that's the one thing CNN did not call breaking news. All right, Tigo wrote in, how about you make that speech for a filibuster change in Joe Manchin's state multiple times? Guys, if you watch Power Hour with me and Nina Turner on Thursdays, you'll see Nina suggested 1,000 ways that they could break Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. They haven't done one. It's not like we can't think of it. It's not like there aren't ways to put pressure on Manchin and Sinema. We've literally come up with dozens of ways to do it. They won't do any of them because they're on the same team. Manchin isn't Biden's opponent. Manchin is Biden's offensive line. Okay, he's protecting Biden and his actual corporate agenda. Carlson is a lying mother. Tucker wrote in, they won't do any voting rights. The country's about to go fascist. I give it 7 years. Look, by the way, just to be clear, Anna and I slightly disagree on this. I think that if they don't pass some bare bones voting rights, it is so monumentally stupid and a malpractice of the highest order because there's a way to do it so you basically help the Democratic Party and nothing else. And I say they're going to do that because of their greed and selfishness and etc. I guess Anna's point is it doesn't matter how selfish and greedy they are. They're so incompetent. They couldn't even do that even if they wanted to, right?
No, my point is, even if they don't pass it, they just take advantage of the revolving door. They're motivated by their own greed and they're gonna be fine no matter what. They might even get a nice contributor role over at CNN in addition to working as lobbyists for whatever firm. That's what my point is, that it's a win-win for them no matter what.
Yeah, and of course all anti-corruptions way out the door, but that we predicted even before Biden got into office. The Democrats wouldn't do anti-corruption if their life depended on it. Miasis Dragon says Democrats would rather pass kidney stones. Here on Super Chat, Rex Trek says, while I agree 100%, we all need to vote. At 62, I don't want to live in a racist, hateful Republican dystopian hellscape. Well, I hear you on that. That's why, but can you do me a favor? Can you vote in primaries? Vote against every one of these lying corporate Democrats. You take, if anybody takes corporate PAC money, vote against them, sight unseen, because they're owned. Nina's right, they're the owner donors. They're owned by their donors. Okay, go vote in primaries, and then if we have to vote between a fascist and a corporate clown like Biden, we'll be forced to vote for the corporate clown so we don't lose democracy. But fight in the primaries first. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna, back to fun and rage.
Well, let's discuss my favorite topic, alleged insider trading within Congress. So, the stock portfolios of literally dozens of members of Congress have outperformed the stock market in 2021. And we have no new data on this thanks to one of my favorite Twitter accounts, Unusual Whales. This person compiled a list of all of our lawmakers who did in fact beat the stock market in 2021. And if you take a look, this is really a bipartisan effort. You've got Democrats and Republicans, again, let me reiterate, literally dozens of them, who seem to be such expert stock traders that they outperform the overall market. And this is, of course, not the first time this has happened. This has been a long-standing issue that I think has really come to light as a result of the coronavirus pandemic and what we saw happen in the Senate with senators essentially selling certain stocks, individual stocks, after they had a closed-door briefing on the severity of the coronavirus pandemic before the general public really knew about the severity of the pandemic. This was early on in 2020. Now, if you look at that list, you've got 19 Democrats and 16 Republicans. So this is not a partisan, an anti-Democrat or anti-Republican issue. This is really a corruption issue that impacts both political parties. And they're also apparently doing real well when it comes to trading options, something that I'm not in any way an expert on, but let's take a quick look at that graph because it shows that in terms of trading options, Josh Gottheimer, Jim Langevin, and also Nancy Pelosi and Blake Moore, all four of them outperformed in trading options. All right, so with that said, I wanna just really show you guys that this has been an issue for decades. And it's not just about the fact that we have a double standard where if we were trading stocks based on insider info, we'd go to prison. They don't go to prison. This happens out in the open. There are no real consequences for it. In fact, there have been cases where all they're supposed to do is file their financial disclosures and they miss the deadlines, and there are no consequences for that either. There is no accountability whatsoever, and this has been going on for decades. And obviously, they have a bias in place because they're personally financially invested in companies that maybe they should consider regulating. But why would they regulate when they know they're personally invested? Anyway, let's take a look at this fun video showing you just how long this has been going on.
They have market moving information, and they're going to act on that information. I mean, information is king.
A groundbreaking 2004 study by a group of professors and researchers examined the records of US senators between 1993 and 1998. The study found that a portfolio tracking the stocks that the US senators bought during the same time period outperformed the market by 85 basis points each month, and a portfolio that tracked the stocks that the senators sold during the period lagged behind the market by 12 basis points. The study concluded that the senators knew appropriate times to both buy and sell their common stocks.
So again, Cenk, there are two things happening here, two negatives in this behavior. Negative number one, of course, is the fact that it's very likely that they're trading based on insider information, something that we would go to prison for. But I would argue the second consequence is far greater, which is if they have these personal financial investments in individual stocks, that bias will motivate or inform their policy making decisions. And that means that they're not gonna work for us, they're gonna work for their personal portfolios.
Yeah, so this is wrong 8 ways to Sunday. So first of all, them owning stock at all gives them an instant bias, because if you're debating, let's say, the minimum wage and you own stock in restaurants, well, the restaurant folks are very much against raising the minimum wage. Well, you have a direct conflict of interest against your own voters. It's so obvious. I mean, there's an argument to be made that they shouldn't even own mutual funds. But okay, fine, I'd take it, right? No problem. But we're not anywhere near that. So they not only own mutual funds, they own direct companies, and they know which companies. Oh, hey, I'm not gonna break up Google. So once they announce that news, I bet Google stock goes up. So, I mean, it goes on and on. The conflicts of interest, again, are very obvious for the average person. That's why about 95% of Americans think that they shouldn't do this. And shockingly enough, 95% of politicians think they should. But if all of that wasn't clear enough, you could see the data dating back all the way to 1993, take any period of time, study it, and the politicians somehow magically, coincidentally, do way, way, way better than the markets and than the average person. And on top of everything else, they have insider information and they use it brazenly. So when, and one more thing is, Anna is gonna give you the rest of it. Obama passed the Stock Act, and the Republicans pretended to be in favor of it as well about 10 years ago. Understand that like at least half the things they pass in Congress are just marketing gimmicks, so that the press, which dutifully back then declared it historic. Oh my God, it's such an important big change. Obama and the corporate Republicans and corporate Democrats should get such great credit for this. And then how many times have they enforced the Stock Act since? Literally zero.
It has.
It was always a lie.
Right, and especially in the House, the Stock Act, which mandates those financial disclosures, has no teeth. I mean, we talked about that on the show previously. So you're right in bringing that up, and you're right in mentioning how, while it was celebrated as historic, when push comes to shove, it didn't mitigate the behavior that we're seeing. And I want to now talk about honestly, the ridiculous proposals and what's really taking place in regard to changing this, right? So all these people are starting to give Jon Ossoff a lot of credit, because apparently he is looking to propose legislation that would ban members of Congress from trading individual stocks. But he claims that he's waiting until he finds a Republican co-sponsor to the bill before proposing it. So let me just be clear. We still have the legislative filibuster in place in the Senate. So there's no way it would pass in the Senate. But more importantly, let's also not forget that Nancy Pelosi, who is the Speaker of the House, she makes decisions about whether or not bills even make it to the House floor for a vote. She's made herself very clear on how she feels about the possibility of banning members of Congress from participating in the stock market. Let's watch.
Madam Speaker, Insider just completed a 5-month investigation finding that 49 members of Congress and 182 senior congressional staffers have violated the Stock Act, the insider trading law. I'm wondering if you have any reaction to that. And secondly, should members of Congress and their spouses be banned from trading individual stocks while serving in Congress?
No, I don't know to the second one. We have a responsibility to report in the stock. On the stock, but I'm not familiar with that 5-month review, but if people aren't reporting, they should be. Because this is a free market and people, We are a free market economy. They should be able to participate in that.
Yeah, trading on insider information is not, participating in the free market. It's illegal for regular citizens. And also, never mind the fact that she's supposed to be a public servant, not someone who uses her position of power to just enrich herself. But of course, we're talking about the United States of America, which is incredibly corrupt, full of corrupt politicians who don't care about anything else but their own financial interests and their own stock portfolios. With that said, though, going back to Jon Ossoff, why? Why is he proposing something that he knows would not pass? And more importantly, why is he saying, I'm not gonna propose it until I can find a Republican to co-sponsor it? That might give you this illusion that he's interested in doing this in a bipartisan way, but no, this is all just a game. It's a trick. This is my speculation, my analysis on it, but I think I'm right. He's just trying to do this as a stunt to point fingers at Republicans for not wanting to do something about this corruption. But he knows full well that this is not something that would pass in Congress, especially since there has not been a plan in place to do away with the legislative filibuster in the Senate.
Yeah.
It's just the truth.
Yeah, so Ossoff is not the worst of them, but nonetheless, here's my translation of what Ossoff is saying. Blah, 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 blah. It has a 0% chance of passing, he knows that. This is just marketing. And by the way, half of Washington, I'm sure, is scandalized by this. Ossoff said that there shouldn't be insider trading when the Queen insider trades. How dare he? Oh, wow, did he send her a strongly worded letter? Okay, you guys wanna know what you would do if you actually wanted to pass this? You would bring tremendous attention to it because literally in a poll, only 5% of Americans said they should be allowed to do this, okay? You have 95% of Americans on your side. It's an easy win as long as you attract attention to it and embarrass the other politicians. So you would strategically call a press conference saying, I'm tired of the corruption of Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi. Mm-hmm. And you would talk about how she gained, what does she have, Anna? 69% returns. I mean, it's absurd. It's absurd. And you put the 69% return on a giant placard and you show it to the entire press. And then everybody would talk about, oh my God, Ossoff versus Pelosi. Wait a minute, did Pelosi really make that much money? Holy cow, that's ridiculous. How did she do it? Oh, look at her husband's trades, etc. And it would bring a lot of pressure and they would cave. But that would require courage and honesty, which almost no Democrat in the country has.
And by the way, it's not just Democrats, of course. In response to Ossoff's proposal, I mean, in some ways, what Ossoff did kind of worked because it was just a marketing ploy to point fingers at Republicans for not wanting to do anything about this corruption. But immediately following news of what Ossoff is doing with this proposal, this alleged proposal, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy came out and claimed that he's considering instituting a ban on lawmakers holding and trading stocks of individual companies, but there's a condition here. If the Republicans win a majority in the House of Representatives in November's elections, why? If you see this as a huge problem, why are you gonna wait until Republicans have control of Congress? If this is something that you genuinely care about, and it's something that allegedly Democrats are in favor of doing something about, why wouldn't you do something about it right now? It's because neither one of them, whether we're talking about Ossoff or McCarthy, genuinely want to do anything, think that anything will happen if they propose the legislation. It's just the way things work. And I want you guys to think a little more critically when these proposals are being put out there. Is there a plan in place to actually accomplish this stated goal? Or is this an attempt to do some positive PR, especially in a midterm election cycle where Democrats have failed to really provide any material gains for the average American and are looking for anything and everything to latch onto for their campaigning. And so with that explanation in place, I just want to note that whether we're talking about Jon Ossoff or Kevin McCarthy, neither one of them deserve cookies. No cookies for you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I'll add one last thing. I read Kevin McCarthy's so-called proposal. Even the quote you just read, Anna, that's not even true. He says, well, we will, but it could be this or it could be that, and we would only do it if my dog didn't eat the bill first. And so when you read the caveats, it's a joke. He's not even promising to do it at all. And look, we're honest about Democratic politicians. Find me a right-wing show that's honest about Republican politicians. They're all crooks. They're all crooks. They all do the insider trading. The two biggest people who got busted on insider trading during COVID were Republican senators. So one from North Carolina, one from Georgia. Please do not believe anybody in media that tells you that politicians are honest and wonderful, but only on your side.
Well, there's one final angle I want to get to on this story. So let's talk about this secret Marxist. So, is Larry Kudlow, Trump's former economic advisor, really just a secret socialist? Well, he recently cited a leftist magazine while criticizing members of Congress for trading individual stocks. This was during an appearance on Fox News, which, yes, I know, he also has his own Fox News programming. But with that said, let's hear who he decided to give some love to.
Nancy Pelosi's trading acumen is fantastic. She's now been voted the 2021 Wall Street Trader of the Year. There's this wonderful piece from JacobinMag.com. I don't know it. I'm told it's a left-wing publication, but it's absolutely hilarious.
I mean, you heard it here, folks. Larry Kudlow loves a socialist magazine, Jacobin. He finds it very hilarious. And the story or the piece that he's about to cite is from Ryan Zigraff. It's titled Nancy Pelosi 2021 Wall Street Trader of the Year. Thanks to her investing prowess, the Speaker of the House's wealth grew by an estimated $16.7 million in 2020, just as millions of Americans fell into poverty and struggled to make ends meet during the COVID-19 pandemic. Long live the Queen of Stonks.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of great things here. One, a Trump official shouting out a socialist magazine is what we didn't know we needed in 2022. Totally. But he's right that the gains that Pelosi have are so far above what is already a booming market. I mean, her and her husband are beating the market. I don't think I could use old school analogies. Anyway, they're beating them silly, and it is silly. Everybody knows she's got the information. And by the way, she's fabulously rich. Her husband's a trader to begin with, a finance guy overall. I think they're in real estate. They're in every kind of thing. They got their fingers in everything. Now, the one thing that Kudlow didn't tell you and is dishonest about is his buddies in the Republican Party do the same exact thing, and he loves it. That's what he signed up for in the Trump administration was fill the swamp, fill the swamp. They did insider trading galore.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Again, this is not an issue that only impacts the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. This is really a bipartisan effort. And we see that corruption play out in their policy decisions. We see it play out in the way that ordinary people get prosecuted for possibly trading on insider information, whereas members of Congress seem to be doing it right in front of our faces, and there are absolutely no consequences for it. But don't worry, Cenk, there are investigations here and there by, let's say, the Senate Ethics Committee, or that's pretty much it. But other than that, they get to do what we would get into, rightfully, a lot of trouble for doing. I want to go to one final short video just to make sure that I give you more context into what Kudlow was saying. But Cenk, you're absolutely right. Kudlow himself is someone who has had no problem with corruption in government. I mean, he worked for an insanely corrupt administration, the Trump administration. So while he loves to point fingers at Pelosi, and it's right to point fingers at corrupt politicians like Pelosi, let's not make the mistake of thinking that this is simply a Democratic issue. With that said, here's more of the interview.
They traded 50 million in assets, annualized returns of 69% as of October, according to an estimate from, they have something called the Nancy Pelosi Portfolio Tracker. Her performance is better, get this, her performance is better than Warren Buffett, George Soros, or Kathy Wood.
Okay, all right, now do the Republican lawmakers. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the list of members of Congress who outperformed the market last year, Nancy Pelosi isn't even first on the list. A lot of Republicans on that list.
Actually, we showed that list in the last segment. I want to bring it back up to see all the red right there. You see the top are all red. Red are Republicans. So we always come with receipts. And the top two insider traders were two Republican senators and the Senate so-called ethics committee or lack of ethics committee. Both Republicans and Democrats were like, what do you mean? Those guys are elites just like us. We would never punish them. In fact, we let them do whatever they want. They robbed millions of dollars through the insider information they had. And we were sorry we ever brought them up to even investigate. And on their way out, they probably patted them on the ass. So don't believe the hype when you see Kudlow or Democrats or anyone telling you it's just the other party. No, it's the powerful versus the rest of us. And by the way, when Wall Street bankers do insider trading, Larry Kudlow loves it. Loves it. He lives for it. That's all he ever celebrated on CNBC in the first place. So it's an ironic messenger for this story, but nonetheless, at least it got on some sort of media that some politicians are corrupt, which almost never happens.
When we come back from the break, I'll show you exactly why and how prosecutors and police only seem to care about protecting property as opposed to people. Come right back.
Oh, just here for free drinks, gifted 5 subs and gave 1,000 bits. Bit of an ironic name when you're the one doing the giving. Much love, much love. Can't love you enough. Anthony Chicken says TYT can't wait for the watch list in a couple of weeks. Boom, and gifted a sub. That's right, everybody. January 24th, we're going to Jackson. JR Jackson's new show, The Watch List. It's got a 10-week run, guys. You got to support it. And that'll determine whether it is a full-time show. So make sure that you're checking that out and subscribe now on youtube.com/watchlistTYT or facebook.com/watchlistTYT. Okay, and the cynical monk gave 1,000 bits. Wow, and said by our own criteria of evaluating foreign democracies, we are a failing democracy. Unfortunately, that is also true. Padfoot Sam said, so everyone in prison for insider trading should be released, and anyone who did their time get the charges cleared from their record. If it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. By the way, Padfoot Sam had written in earlier too about Martha Stewart. And it's such a good point, right? Can we commute her sentence afterwards in hindsight, saying, sorry, since all of our politicians are at 10 times the crook you were, we're gonna commute your sentence or whatever it is, right? Pardon you after the fact. All right, now we go to Super Chat. David Paul says, legal cannabis and voting rights wins Dems their elections and saves democracy. WTF, don't these people get it, Cenk? Stock insider trading is also media betting according to news they are about to release. So, no, of course they don't get it. It's possible that you're right, that if they just did the smallest, tiniest little change, they'd still win. But they can't even muster that up in their infinite corruption. Parker says, in the interest of keeping it real, If BBB completely fails and nothing gets passed in 2022, the Dems likely won't have a majority in both houses till 2028. At which point, by the way, they'll be enormously relieved. They're like, oh my God, whew, when you're in power, like everybody calls your lies. When we were in the minority, we would lie with impunity. And we say, oh yeah, wait till we get in power. You'll see all the things we'll do. And then laugh and laugh and laugh. And every clown news actor on television, oh, the Democrats are going to do those things. We trust and believe in the Democrats. The Democrats are going to do it. You should vote for the Democrats because they're going to do those things. Okay, why don't you just be honest? That's what they're promising, and they're never going to do them. Little Max, by the way, they say, oh no, how dare you? Democrats, of course, do it. The minute Democrats get in office, the media then turns around and goes, there's nothing they could do. There's nothing they could do. I mean, what do you want them to legislate? Just because they're in charge? All right, Little Mac writes in, and he's got this all in caps, so you're clear, not suggesting violent rebellion, asking how long until they push even the left into storming Capitol Hill? If it happens, what will it look like? And guys, I don't want that to happen under any circumstances, but they're playing with fire.
Okay, ready?
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Casper, go. No, we can't hear you. She was muted, sorry.
Apologies, apologies,
okay.
Guys.
Let's do it again.
All right, so we're now learning more about how prosecutors have been working with an oil company behind a controversial pipeline in an effort to receive compensation for aggressively going after protesters of said pipeline. So the pipeline in question is the Line 3 pipeline, which runs through northern Minnesota. It did in fact face opposition from indigenous-led water protectors. And now, thanks to The Intercept and to the Huffington Post, we have information pertaining to new documents that show that the company behind the pipeline, Enbridge, was moving to coordinate with the prosecutors in terms of responding to these protesters in some of the most aggressive ways. For example, as The Intercept reports, defense attorneys pointed to examples like felony theft charges for protesters who chained themselves to equipment and felony aiding attempted suicide for those who crawled into sections of non-functional pipe. So their civil disobedience wasn't just met with extreme policing, it was met with prosecutors who have decided to charge them with the most extreme charges, which I would argue do not in any way even apply to what they were doing while they were demonstrating. Now, in addition to these aggressive legal tactics, there are now new questions surrounding the relationship of the prosecutors to this oil company, Enbridge. As The Intercept writes, documents published by the Partnership for Civil Justice Fund's Center for Protest Law and Litigation, which is representing pipeline opponents, show that Hubbard County, Minnesota attorney Jonathan Frieden sought reimbursement from the Enbridge-funded state escrow account to pursue charges against the corporation's opponents. The requests luckily were denied, but the fact that they were asking for compensation to prosecute these demonstrators is a huge problem. Frieden, for instance, attempted to bill $12,207.14 to a special account set up by the state of Minnesota to allow Enbridge to pay for law enforcement and public safety expenses affiliated with pipeline construction. Frieden was asking Enbridge to pay for the labor of Assistant County Attorney Anna Emmerling and 3 support staff for processing approximately 400 cases associated with construction of the Enbridge Line 3 pipeline. And just to give you some snippets of their exchange, so he had written, the prosecutor had written to Enbridge, hours are due to multiple arrests / citations / complaints, and prosecution for public safety related costs for maintaining the peace in and around the construction site, the county attorney stated in his invoice. Frieden wrote in an email that the Center for Protest Law and Litigation obtained through a public records request, quote, "I'm wondering if that might be charged in the future, given the significant amount of resources my office will be expending over the next 6 months in the prosecution of criminal acts associated with Line 3. How about this? How about don't prosecute them, especially with these trumped up charges that don't apply to the civil disobedience that the protesters were involved in. Now, Rick Hart responded. He's the account manager for the Enbridge funded escrow account. He wrote back saying prosecution expenses are not allowable reimbursements or reimbursable expenses for the Line 3 public safety escrow account. And Frieden, the prosecutor, didn't like that. He responded in a pretty salty way, saying, quote, "I look forward to hearing why the multiple late nights and overtime hours by my staff to change the individuals endangering or charge the individuals endangering the public don't qualify under public safety. I assume the cost to arrest them is covered, just not to prosecute them." How does that make any sense under the language you provided below?
Okay, so right wing, where are you at? I mean, this is as significant an abridgment of freedom of speech, freedom to assemble, as you could find. And how about just freedom? They're charging him with a felony that can give them 5 to 10 years for voicing their political opinion. 5 to 10 years of robbing them of their freedom and their liberty because they dared to oppose big business and big government combined. The right wing should be furious about this. And forget somebody getting fired. You want to talk about cancel culture, put somebody in prison for 10 years for voicing their opinion. Well, if you don't agree with me yet, let me do 2 more things. One, let me read the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. This could not be more exactly what the founding fathers intended that we have the right to do. And now, and historically in America, when you do civil disobedience, you chain yourself to a restaurant, or you in the civil rights days, you do go into an all-white restaurant and you sit down, etc. That was charged as a misdemeanor because it's obvious that you're doing it peaceably and you're doing a redress of grievances and you're acting in a constitutional way. Now they're saying the corporations are tired of your rights. So if you do that, they'll throw away the key, lock you up and throw away the key, and they're paying for the prosecution. And Anna, I think I can get the right wing on my side, at least on this analogy. Remember, TYT is also a company, and we get protested. So imagine right wing protesters protesting TYT. We just pay the cops to lock you all up. So what? If we just buy cops, we can buy them too. We're a company, we got money. Shoot, I could raise millions of dollars to lock you guys up. You really want companies to have those kind of rights? No, I mean, this is not democracy.
I agree with you on that. And this obviously is not new. I mean, when you think about the massive financial donation that was given to the NYPD as Occupy Wall Street was gathering in Zuccotti Park in New York, I mean, it tells you everything you need to know. I mean, the public police departments across the country, the prosecutors, the very people who are supposed to be protecting and serving us, show us over and over again that they are more interested in protecting private property and doing what's necessary to protect the greed and corruption that we see in this country that's carried out by these corporations. I mean, there's so many examples of it. This is just another example that shows that prosecutors in Minnesota thought, yeah, let's go for it. Let's prosecute as aggressively as possible. Let's implement charges that don't even apply to what these protesters had done, and everything's fine and dandy because we're gonna be able to collect the funds from this oil company that's behind this pipeline. The fact that the prosecutor brought these charges believing the prosecutions were going to be funded by the Enbridge Corporation and oil company raises real issues as to the due process rights of defendants, said Maya Verheyden Hillard. She's the director of the Center for Protest Law and Litigation and an attorney representing opponents of the pipeline. And I couldn't say it better myself. I'm glad that there are lawyers fighting for the protesters here, because what's happening is absolutely disgusting.
And I'm going to add one last detail to the Zagati Park example that you gave. And a lot of people might not know this. It was a small story, although it should have been a large one. During Occupy Wall Street, police tracked the protests literally in a bunker in Wall Street with Wall Street private investigators. So it was the bankers working with the cops to track American protesters. Now, right wing, you complain about the global elites all the time. Well, the NYPD works for the global elites. They're literally in the same room trying to make sure that Americans, left wing or right wing, don't have rights to protest corporate rule. So understand, when you got Republican leaders telling you, oh no, big business is great, they're your friends, you should deregulate them and make sure they don't pay any taxes at all. You shouldn't have any cops looking out to protect you on Wall Street. No cops on Wall Street. Understand that they think you're suckers and they're using you for their own corporate interests.
Well, let's do one more story before we end the first hour of the show. And this is, I'm not even exaggerating. This is literally the only Madison Cawthorn related story that I found any interest in. Everything else seems dumb and useless, but let's talk about what's happening in North Carolina. Voters in North Carolina are moving pretty quickly to do what they can to block Madison Cawthorn from being able to run for re-election due to his involvement in the January 6th riots. Now, that headline might seem a little disturbing, right? Why don't you just let the voters decide? But the argument made here is actually an interesting constitutional argument. So let me give you the details. Lawyers filed the candidacy challenge on behalf of 11 voters with North Carolina's Board of Elections, which oversees a process by which candidate qualifications are scrutinized. Now, what exactly is this constitutional argument that the voters in North Carolina are making? Well, the voters say that Cawthorn cannot run because he fails to comply with an amendment in the Constitution ratified shortly after the Civil War. The 1868 amendment says no one can serve in Congress, quote, who having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same. And so in the written challenge, of course, January 6th comes up. The written challenge says that the events on January 6th, quote, amounted to an insurrection, and that Cawthorn's speech at the rally supporting Donald Trump, his other comments and information he published, and information in published reports provide a reasonable suspicion or belief that he helped facilitate the insurrection and is thus disqualified. And so I think that's a really interesting argument, and I'm curious what the audience thinks about it, whether or not they should be able to do this, to move forward with this kind of challenge to Cawthorn. And I should note that Madison Cawthorn is gonna run for re-election in a redrawn district, which is even friendlier to Republican candidates. Of course, because that's what redistricting typically leads to in this country, which is why Democrats are incredibly feckless for not actually fighting for voting rights to change or reform the gerrymandering that's taking place. But the argument, by the way, cites tweets like the one I'm about to read from Madison Cawthorn. This is a tweet that he wrote on January 4th of 2021. January 6th is fast approaching. The future of this republic hinges on the actions of a solitary few. Get ready, the fate of a nation rests on our shoulders, yours and mine. Let's show Washington that our backbones are made of steel and titanium. It's time to fight. So Cenk, what do you think about this?
Well, I think it's pretty tough because look, where are the lines, right? If you tell people to fight politically, there's nothing wrong with that. If you tell Bob to go take violent action, that's illegal, and so that's clear. But the Republicans leaders, both in media and in politics, know where the line is. They know what gets them in legal trouble, and they do everything up to that line. Well, wouldn't it be great or necessary if you took up arms? And remember, the tyrant is the government. The government is the tyrant, and you've got your guns, right? Now, I didn't tell Bob to go kill someone in government. I didn't say it, right? And so Green Bay sweep, that's Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro publicly bragging about their coup attempt. And now, can you argue that an election should have a recount? Of course you can, right? An audit, of course you can. And by the way, they did have recounts and audits in all these states, multiple ones, right? And Biden added to his lead. But when you say, hey, let's decertify an election, well, let's not certify it in the first place through the vice president, which is just ceremonial. And instead, let's take it back to the state legislatures and have them lie. And so then we'll declare ourselves president. Well, that's a coup attempt, but I think probably the crime happens when the legislators just say, I don't care that Biden won, we're gonna declare Trump the winner. But when they do that, it's already too late. The crime is treason and insurrection, but it will have worked. So they've put us in a tough legal spot, and I'm not sure what can be done. But it is very scary that they continue to flirt with that. And their intent is obvious. If we don't win through democracy, screw democracy. Let's win through violence and deception.
Well, that's why I'm actually supportive of this effort. I would not be supportive if I didn't know that they were gonna rely on this constitutional argument. I think that argument is fascinating, and I'm glad that they're gonna put it to the test, and let's see how it plays out. We're certainly not gonna see real consequences toward the various Republican lawmakers who aided and abetted the efforts on January 6th coming from Congress. Our congressional lawmakers, the Democratic Party, talk a big talk, but when push comes to shove, whether we're talking about like literal war criminals or people who tried to overthrow the party that actually won the 2020 election, they never actually put actions behind their words. They'll do the investigations, they'll make a big deal about it in their campaigning, but I don't expect Congress to hand down any real consequences. To go about this in a legal way, and by making a constitutional argument is an interesting one, and I am curious to see how it all plays out. But enough about me, we wanna hear from you, and we wanna know what you think. So the Damage Report actually had a poll on this. We wanna ask you the same question. Go to tyt.com/polls to participate. Should members of Congress who supported the insurrection be barred from running for re-election? Let us know what you think.
Yeah, and look, I think the best solution was the one Cori Bush suggested, but as usual, the Democrats bungled it. So she said on January 6th, she had the resolution ready for the Republicans who said we should not certify the election. Every one of them should have been kicked out at that time. And the logic there is, hey, you guys are saying this election was fraudulent. So obviously your own election is also fraudulent by your own claims. It's not our claim, it's your claim. So if you're claiming that your election was fraudulent, well, obviously we can't seat you. And so you gotta go home. Clean up, go home. That would have been a winning argument. Because it's impossible to argue against. Like, oh no, my election was same exact election that happened in my district was fraud when it comes to the presidential one, but not fraudulent when it came to mine. It's an absurd argument, absurd. And they would have been humiliated, and that would have been a good moment to point out their treachery and how they were against democracy, and they were clearly lying. And what did Pelosi do instead? As usual, not a damn thing. In fact, she tried to block Cori Bush from introducing that because Republicans are our best friend.
Good. The dumb and the feckless. All right, we gotta go, we gotta take a break. But when we come back for the second hour, I promise we've got some more bangers for you. Lots of great news to share with you. Well, I wouldn't say great news, but important news to share with you. So don't miss it, come right back.
You know what the progressive movement needs? It needs a little energy, a little pizzazz, maybe a little caffeine. Oh, coffee. But what if it was Too Strong Coffee. Yes, new, twostrongcoffee.com/TYT. Look, this helps progressive causes. It's also organic and fair trade, so you've got peace of mind that it was done right, and it happens to taste great. So check it out right now at twostrongcoffee.com/TYT.
That 300 million is a pretty good number, Well, that's the size of the US population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts?
Young Turks has just passed another milestone. 15 billion views.
Damn.
All right, lots of comments. You guys are the best.
I'm gonna read a few comments from our members.
Mr. Methuselah says on YouTube, super chat, thanks for all the important work you do for TYT for the movement.
Do you know who had the first super chat when I got back from vacation? You won't be surprised to find out. Rob Shively. What do you know? Rob says, rejoice, for Dragon Daddy has returned.
This question sent to us by Izzy Sanchez Jr. Is it me, or is Meghan McCain talking as fast as Ben Shapiro? Is that the way the right tries to look smart and intellectual? Well, yes.
Michael Nathan writes it on Twitter. Did Anna choose Cenk's outfit today? I'm sure it wasn't Cenk himself. Man Bun Cenk and Skinny Jeans says, so now Anna has pointed out, okay, that's his handle.
T. Joyce, 1971, saying Donald Trump is good at pulling out of things, NAFTA, the Iran deal, NATO. It's just too bad Fred Trump didn't.
All right, let me do a little quick plug here. It's not even a plug, I'm bragging, okay? I'm bragging, watch me. We have a channel on YouTube, a whole channel devoted just to the Young Turks. It's badass, right? Wow, man. I can see the voice.
You guys are rock stars.
Unbelievable, Senator Sanders. Welcome to Rebel Headquarters. Man, you guys are amazing. We gave you what you wanted.
Okay. Speaking of shirts.
I have a surprise.
You reached a lot of people. You are the Young Turks. And we have spread that progressive message wide and far. Let's keep it going.
Here's what we do. We go beyond the headline. We are willing to engage in transparent conversations with those who do not think like me. We also make sure that you know what's happening not only nationally, but in your local area. Make sure you tune in to Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, Monday through Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time.
Cool news, shoptyt.com now has books. There's a whole bunch of books there. You're gonna be shocked to find out that they're largely progressive. Of course! Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People, is there. It's fantastic. It's a story from Jesse Jackson to Bernie Sanders to AOC that explains the progressive movement probably better than any book I've ever read. Speaking of awesome books, my dad's got a book out called The Original Young Turk, where he goes from the poorest olive farmer you ever met in your life to living the American dream. All right, back on TYT, Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian, and Rum Did It. Rum Did It just joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube. And by the way, so did Vodka. A lot of things did it.
Sure, there's a lot of parents out there who look at their kids and think the same thing.
All right, thank you guys. Membership makes this show possible, very literally. So if you see us speaking truth to power, our members did that. So tyt.com/join. All right, Anna.
All right. We've got some good news and then we've got some bad news. And it has to do with the Biden administration mandating that private insurers pay for rapid COVID tests, compensate or reimburse their, I guess, the people who are under their health insurance plans when they need these rapid COVID tests, which, wow, it looks like the Biden administration can actually unilaterally do quite a bit when it comes to private insurers. Wow, fascinating. But there are some flaws, which I'll get to in just a minute. But first, what is this mandate? What are they demanding that these private insurers do? Well, they detail this in a press release, and it says that beginning January 15th of 2022, individuals with private health insurance coverage or covered by a group health plan who purchase an over-the-counter COVID-19 diagnostic test authorized, cleared, or approved by the FDA will be able to have those test costs covered by their plan or insurance. Insurance companies and health plans are required to cover 8 free over-the-counter at-home tests per covered individual per month. That means a family of 4, all on the same plan, would be able to get up to 32 of these tests covered by their health plan per month. And look, it is a step in the right direction, but it does come with some flaws. One of the flaws, for instance, is how are you going to enforce this? How exactly is this gonna work logistically and all of that? Roughly, and also let's keep in mind that a lot of people are not insured at all. Roughly 150 million Americans, or about 45% of the population, are privately insured, mostly through their employers. What happens to the millions of Americans who are not insured? And also, rapid at-home tests are typically sold in 2 packs, ranging in cost from about $14 to $34. That can be prohibitively expensive, especially when tests are purchased in bulk. So for those who don't have insurance, are not covered by insurance companies, and thus cannot be reimbursed by insurance companies, they're paying for this out of pocket. And there are just too many obstacles in place in regard to ensuring that people can easily get tested to keep themselves and people in their families and communities safe. There are other logistical issues with the plan, as I alluded to earlier. For instance, the guidance is not explicit about how insurers should design reimbursement systems, so they could make the process onerous, which I guarantee you they will, with less user-friendly websites and more hoops to jump through, nor is there a deadline by which reimbursement must occur. You know, in the UK, and I know this because so many of our viewers in the UK have written to us, they just walk into a pharmacy and like, yo, I need some tests, and they get the tests. No questions asked, no problems, no long lines. If you're not insured, there are some testing places you can go to, but with this Omicron surge, the lines and the wait tend to be incredibly long, and that discourages people from sitting there and waiting to get the rapid tests that they need in order to figure out whether or not they have coronavirus.
So to Americans, I say this: every other nation has universal health care. That's a developed nation. That is, and we're the richest nation, and we don't do it. And that means they have free health care. And you've been told by our media, funded by the same private insurance companies and drug companies. You see their ads every time you turn on cable news. Those guys work for the healthcare, privatized healthcare industry. All of cable news does. You've been told a lie your whole life that we can't afford it. The reality is, all those countries like the UK give out those free test kits. Everything is free, and they pay half of what we pay. That is all of those countries combined. On average, I know it seems unbelievable because you've been lied to your whole life. You can go look it up on legitimate places. I mean, New York Times, et cetera, will bury it on page 827. They'll write a story. Oh, by the way, the rest of the world pays half of what we do, and they get free, completely free healthcare for all of their citizens. But when it comes to issues, nope, they forget it. Instant amnesia. It's never the headlines. No one on cable news ever says it. So to the rest of the world, help us. We're trapped here in this brutal, brutal country where the corporations have taken over. The machines now rule us, and we can't break free because all of our politicians work for the machines. They all get paid millions of dollars, and then our media lies to everyone and brainwashes them like we're in the Matrix and tells them, oh, politicians are supposed to take millions of dollars in bribes. Healthcare is not supposed to be free. You're supposed to die in the streets if you can't afford to pay a private corporation. There's almost no way to break out of it because of the death lock that corporate media and corporate politicians have over America. And that's very literal. It's a death lock. You think it's an accident that we had the #1 cases and #1 deaths in the world for COVID? No, we kill our own citizens for corporate profits all the time with great regularity. That is normal course of business in America.
Well, since we're on the topic of greed and how difficult it is to do simple things in the United States as a result to rising costs, why don't we talk about college tuition? Because there is a massive lawsuit that's ongoing right now that's impacting 16 major universities. So, a new lawsuit is accusing 16 major universities, including many in the Ivy League, of antitrust violations by illegally price fixing and collaborating to limit the amount of money that students can receive through financial aid. Now, this lawsuit was filed in Illinois by law firms representing 5 former students. And here's what we know about the lawsuit so far. Schools are allowed under federal law to collaborate on their formulas, but only if they don't consider applicants' financial need in admissions decisions. The suit alleges these schools do in fact weigh candidates' ability to pay in certain circumstances and therefore should not be eligible for the antitrust exemption. Now, the universities are allegedly violating this so-called need blind condition of the law because they might be considering applicants and their financials in their admission decisions. Lawyers say that at least some of the schools consider financial need by giving an admission edge to children, here we have it, of wealthy donors, because of course, some also weigh applicants' finances when admitting them off the waiting list and look at finances in admission decisions for certain programs, the suit alleges. And so this doesn't shock me at all. Like, obviously they're going through this lawsuit, Cenk. We'll find out if there's enough evidence to prove what these allegations are. But I would actually be shocked if the universities weren't doing this. This honestly seems par for the course. We've seen the cost of tuition. We've also seen other trends with universities across the country where they're accepting only an increased amount of either foreign students or out-of-state students who are always charged far more for their tuition compared to those who are in state or in the country. And I can get to some of that data in a bit, but first I wanted to get your thoughts on this lawsuit.
So we have a lot of naive conversations in America. So do you want to know what rules everything? Money, period. So let me explain how it does, right? So especially in for-profit corporations, if there are executives who are going to make management decisions and one executive says, let's do X to make more money, and another executive says, no, that would create ethical issues. Let's do Y and make less money. Guess which one gets promoted and which one gets fired? No one ever wins an argument in a boardroom to make less money. Pretty much ever. You could have some short-term situations where it might happen from time to time, and only because, by the way, the PR damage from that would cost us more money than if we just did the right thing, right? But at the end of the day, it's all math. So they're always gonna do the more brutal thing if it makes them more money. So in the case of the universities, a lot of them aren't for profit, they're nonprofits. But what happens? Money wins anyway, because they're obsessed with their endowment funds. Who's got the larger genitalia? Let's keep it real, okay? So Harvard and Yale and Stanford are in a constant fight. Oh yeah, my endowment's bigger than yours. Well, you know what, man, my endowment passed yours. Now, does it matter? Does it help the students of Harvard or any of these schools? Especially if they need financial aid, we just told you it doesn't, right? And you know how big Harvard's endowment is now? It's over $53 billion.
Say that again.
over $53 billion.
But is that enough, Jake?
And by the way, they never spend it. All it does is grow and grow and grow because they want to make sure that their genitalia is larger than Yale's. So you never get a tuition break, you never get anything at Harvard. And now, hey, are they colluding informally and checking to see if you can actually afford college and then cutting people out accordingly? Of course, I would be shocked if they weren't doing that, because everyone is obsessed with money. You must put rules in place and you must enforce those rules. Otherwise, they're always going to lean to the green.
So more than 170,000 former undergraduate students who received partial financial aid at the schools that I'm about to list, going back 18 years, are free to join this lawsuit. So if you happen to be one of those former students, this is something that you should know about. So in addition to Yale, Georgetown, and Northwestern, other named defendants in this suit include Brown University, the California Institute of Technology, the University of Chicago, Columbia University, Cornell University, Dartmouth College, Duke University, Emory University, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT of course, the University of Notre Dame, the University of Pennsylvania, Rice University, and Vanderbilt University. Cenk, you might be free to join this lawsuit.
I'm two for two. I got two schools in there. Count me in. Put me in, coach.
Oh, you fancy, huh?
Yeah, so listen, I think that this is a really interesting lawsuit, and I can't wait to see what the result of it is. So maybe they'll get some justice for folks, because the laws are only recourse left. You have to actually pass laws that protect people over profits, and you have to enforce those laws. So good luck to them. Let's see how this turns out.
When we come back from the break, we're gonna tell you how much Alex Jones has made off of his ridiculous supplements and nonsense, something that he did not want us to know about. We've got those details and more when we come back.
All right, back guys. So first of all, if you see me hyped up, it's Too Strong Coffee and you know it. These are collector's items, these handmade mugs, you can check that out. I love citrus, that's a new flavor that we have. And Uprising, the morning coffee's unbelievable. It's the best tasting coffee I've ever had, and they give huge money to progressive causes. So toostrongcoffee.com/TYT. Okay, toostrongcoffee.com/TYT. All right, I'm going to Twitch again. House Tarsparian writes in, living in the United States is just unbearable and would love to see the rest of the developed world hold the US accountable for crimes against humanity for simply forcing this corrupt and brutal barbaric system onto its own citizens. Love you, Casper and Cenk. You're not so bad yourself. No, love you, Casper and Cenk. You're not so bad yourself. LOL. Subscribe yesterday. I love TYT. Love back at you, even though I just got the LOL. But okay. Delta Quadrant Dragon says Bezos bucks the TYT, please. If you have Amazon Prime already, do us a favor, man. It just takes like 30 seconds. Go to tyt.com/prime and it's free for you, totally free. Just takes 30 seconds and you can get Jeff Bezos's money to us. It's real, and we show you how to do it. tyt.com/prime. All right. On Cawthorn, Frank Morningtree, who gave 1,000 bits, said, I'm a North Carolina resident, born and raised, and if it's in the Constitution, get him the F out. He's a disgrace to our state and not a true representation of all of our citizens. Captain Smiles gifted 5 subs. Raven 1380 is a new member on Twitch, that's great. Haiku Dragon said, once convicted of a felony, no more voting. That's the whole point of doing this, referring to the oil pipeline story, charging those guys with felonies. Jesse MB27 in YouTube Super Chat says, as an ex-GOP who took until 2016 to realize how damn anti-democracy had gone. God bless you, TYT, and similar independent progressive media operations. Well, Jesse, we'd love to hear that. We'd love to hear it because, hey, turns out we made a small difference and we appreciate that. But more than that, Jesse, I love to hear it because that means, hey, there's open-minded people in America and we can still talk to each other and we can still change each other's minds and people are still open to facts. So you deserve a lot of credit for having that open mind. Franklin Sharpslicer is back and he writes, understand right-wing anti-vax want to drink we, and as GOP love to hug and kiss, what a sight that would be. Insider traders and insider traders I see. Well, there you go. That's a nice poem. Rachel Fielding says, how is that more power corporate Democrats gain, the less they trust us with it? What more can Biden do? He already whispered. By the way, I checked the rest of the news outlets in the middle of the show, and they're all going crazy over Biden gave a strong speech. Oh my God, he's so strong. Man, his speech game is on point. No one cares about his speech game. Pass a goddamn thing. Joseph Knight in the members section said, it's on shaky ground because no one was charged with insurrection, even though it was. All right, we'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Let's do it. Let's give you more news.
Well, if you ever find yourself thinking about Alex Jones, you probably think about two things. So Alex Jones is mostly known for conspiracy theories, selling weird supplements that purport to make your junk bigger or your muscles stronger, and also asking for money from his audience. But it turns out that he's made quite a bit of money off of selling those supplements, which calls into question why he keeps begging his own audience for money. For instance, he made a whopping $165 million from selling his sketchy supplements in a short period of time. InfoWars store, where Jones sells an amalgamation of dietary supplements and survival gear, made $165 million in sales from September of 2015 to the end of 2018. And that's according to court filings related to a lawsuit that Jones recently lost over his lies and defamation about the 2012 Sandy Hook school massacre. Now, it is fascinating that he didn't want anyone to know about this. In fact, one of the reasons why he ended up being guilty of defamation is because he just would not cooperate with the lawsuit that was brought against him. There were documents that he was asked to provide, that he was told to provide by judges, and he refused to do it. This is included in those documents that he was refusing to provide. He did not want people to know just how much money he made in such a short period of time from selling these supplements. And there's good reason for that. He makes quite a bit of money off of asking his audience to give money to him for various alleged causes. Now, Jones repeatedly ignored court orders to provide evidence in the cases against him brought by families of victims from the massacre who have accused Jones of enriching himself by spewing lies about the shooting in an effort to demonstrate the alleged link between Jones's profits and his conspiracy theories about the shooting. Lawyers for Sandy Hook families had requested detailed financial records and analytics that they said Jones ducked for more than 2 years. So it's not just that he made a ton of money off of selling these weird supplements. It's also the fact that as he was doling out various conspiracy theories, including incredibly damaging conspiracy theories about the families of Sandy Hook victims, he would notice that his profits would increase in his store for these supplements. On November 18th of 2016, Jones, for instance, aired a segment titled Alex Jones's final statement on Sandy Hook, in which he said he has watched a lot of soap operas and I've seen actors before. And I know when I'm watching a movie and when I'm watching something real. The InfoWars store made just over $100,000 that day. So it's just look, we talk about incentives being in the wrong place, Cenk. This is a perfect example of it. He profits handsomely off of not just putting out conspiracy theories, but more importantly, putting out conspiracy theories that put the lives of the parents who lost their kids as a result of the Sandy Hook shooting in danger.
So this is an amazing story, guys, because I have context on it that most people don't. So I'm going to share that in a second. First of all, if Alex Jones said these numbers, I'd never believe it because they're so outrageously large. And I'd never believe a word he says anyway. But like Anna said, he didn't want these numbers released. They had a discovery in the lawsuit, and that's where sides have to turn over different pieces of evidence. And inside 500 pages of transcripts, there was 30 spreadsheets. They looked at the spreadsheets and they found these numbers about his store. So apparently they're real and they're stunning. So here's the context. I know that our audience is larger than Alex's, and his shop is doing at least, I mean, it's not even really close. I mean, hundreds of times more than we are, okay? How could you do 100x, 200x, et cetera, of a show that's larger than you? So that was the incredible mystery to me. Then as I read more and more about how he does it, it became a little bit clearer. So let me read you a quote of Alex Jones that was part of this story. So, and he does this every day, multiple times a day. So he said, in this case, it's been proven that water in the tap is full of dangerous and life-threatening toxins, ranging from chlorine to fluoride. The threat against your health is huge. That's why it's important that all info warriors clean up their water with water filtration. The products below are made to make sure that your water is clean, healthy, and toxin-free. He told them that the water is life-threatening, and that if they don't buy his filtration, they might die. That's how you sell a lot of product. You make up a conspiracy theory that whatever you're buying now is going to kill you, and you shouldn't buy that. Instead, you should buy the only thing that's going to save your life. And what a coincidence, that's what Alex is selling. And so that's how he scared the living bejesus out of his own audience. And look, he knows what suckers they are. That's why he sells a brain supplement. Think about it, guys. He sells a brain supplement saying, look, you guys are obviously not smart enough. This is gonna help you be smarter. And they go, well, that's definitely true. Let me try this, right? That's one of his best sellers. And that one makes sense to me, but
I mean, look, the thing that I always talk about how like you're naive, Cenk, in the context of like thinking the Democrats are ever gonna do anything. But let me now be self-deprecating because this is where I'm naive. It never ceases to shock me just how gullible, honestly, young men are when it comes to the programming that they consume from either Joe Rogan's podcast or Alex Jones's content. It's kind of amazing. Like today, I really upset steroid connoisseurs for calling out Hulk Hogan for being anti-vax when, come on, man, like really, you're anti-vax because you're worried about the possible side effects? Like, bro, come on. Like, and I brought up the steroid issue. And so many like Joe Rogan listeners were like, no, man, steroids are great, man. Super beast, man. Super beast. And it's like, what are you guys what have you guys seen what people who take steroids look like? No, not based. Actually, very bad, very, very bad. But it's like this, like, especially when it comes to the survival stuff or the supplements that supposedly make your junk bigger or your brain bigger or your muscles bigger. It's like this desperation to be as manly as possible. But I just want to tell, like, if any of you guys are listening to the show right now, I'm not judging. I'm trying to help you out. The sexiest thing is confidence and loving yourself for who you are. No one is turned on with like bloated steroid-induced muscles. Like we're not interested. You get it?
Yeah. I mean, look, I can go on and on. They're like, girls are not, or women are not impressed by, hey, I need to take supplements for my brain. They're not impressed with, hey, listen,
So
don't mind the
hot.
don't mind the giant head and the tiny testicles. It's because I thought I wasn't manly enough. These are not winning strategies. They just aren't. And so, look, there's nothing wrong with selling stuff. We do it too, right? But we sell like T-shirts and with political messages, and we sell coffee. But we don't tell you that too strong coffee is actually going to make you too strong. Like we're like, oh yeah, if you take this, then you'll be a real man. But if you don't drink too strong coffee, you could be weak. Right? Well, if you don't drink the too strong coffee, you're gonna die. That's what snake oil salesmen do. And Alex Jones is a classic snake oil salesman. He's also selling that thing that turns people blue, right?
Oh, yes.
The same thing Candace Owens is hawking. I'm not kidding.
Colloidal or something? Colloidal silver?
Colloidal silver. It literally turns, it makes people look like Smurfs.
I know, it's
I'm
amazing.
not joking. People turn blue. And by the way, it's permanent. You can't undo it. And he says, oh my God, if you take the vaccine, you're gonna die. Don't take the vaccine, you're gonna die, die, die. Instead, turn yourself blue with colloidal silver and make me rich. And people believe it. That's because they haven't taken the brain supplement yet.
There is an upside to this story though, silver lining, if you will. I take a lot.
Silver lining.
I feel this intense amount of pleasure in knowing that despite all the money that Alex Jones is making from this grift, he just seems to be a miserable person overall. I mean, he's just a wreck, like always. He's always crying or like really upset about something, like sweaty tooth madman. And it's like, oh, I'm here for it. I love it. I want him to be miserable. He deserves it.
Yeah, look, they all feel inadequate, and
because they are.
And if they weren't bad guys, I'd actually want to help them, right? I'd be like, hey, like you said earlier, no, you believe in yourself. You know, you don't have to buy into nonsense quick fixes, right? You're good enough, right? But since they do so much damage in the world, then I've got Schaden for you. Oh, the brain supplement didn't work. You're still a dumbass. Who could have figured?
All right, well, why don't we end this segment with some good news? Because there is a massive medical advancement that I'm excited by, especially when you consider how many people, not just in this country, but across the world, need transplants. So, modern medicine has reached a new milestone, a very exciting milestone. To save a man's life, doctors at the University of Maryland actually replaced his failing heart with a pig's heart. And days later, the guy is still alive. It's working. So here's CNN's John Berman completely geeking out over this, and with good reason. He's talking to Dr. Jonathan Reiner, who's explaining the significance of this new medical advancement.
Joining us now, Dr. Jonathan Reiner, CNN medical analyst and professor of medicine and surgery at George Washington University. Dr. Reiner, when I read the headline, a pig heart in a human being, I'm like, nothing else matters. This is everything that matters today. How big of a deal is this?
Well, it's potentially a really big deal, not just for heart transplantation, but for the 100,000 or so folks who are on the waiting list now for other kinds of organ transplants in the United States. So there are a lot of people waiting for organs. Only about 40,000 people actually get an organ transplant every year. So there's great demand for donor organs, kidneys, hearts, livers. And this is sort of proof of concept, or at least the initial steps towards proving that you can modify an animal's organs to make it suitable for transplantation in a human. It's really a remarkable bioengineering feat.
It really is. And the patient here, David Bennett, says that he decided to gamble on the experimental treatment because he would have died without a new heart. He had exhausted other treatments and was too sick to qualify for a human donor heart, family members and doctors said. In fact, he was quoted as saying, "It was either die or do this transplant. I want to live. I know it's a shot in the dark, but it's my last choice." So think about how brave you need to be, really, to do this, because if it doesn't work, you're gone. But he felt like this is it. This is really my last shot, and I got to go for it. And I'm really happy that it worked. Hopefully, it continues to be a functioning heart, and hopefully, this kind of advancement moves on to other organs. You know, I know from personal experience with a family member, kidney organs are in short supply. A lot of people in this country, around the world, need kidney donations, and so this is exciting news, and I'm really happy to see it.
Yeah. So about a dozen people die every single day because they didn't get a transplant, an organ transplant that they needed. So a guy like this, I give him a lot of credit as well, but he was gonna die. He didn't make the list. Isn't that amazing? Some people just don't make the list, and we know they're gonna die, and then they do. And so he's like, well, since I'm definitely gonna die, I'll try the pig heart instead. And so imagine they're about to put you under for surgery, and you have no idea if you're gonna wake up. In fact, the chances aren't good, right? And then you wake up. Look, holy cow, it worked, or holy pig in this case, it worked. And so it did, and God bless science. Science again for the win. Because guys, obviously, if they can perfect this, then those dozen people don't die every single day. We save thousands and thousands of lives, and people extend their lives for potentially decades on end. And look, usually in these type of stories, some fundamentalist religious folks object, oh, that's not what God intended. I don't give a damn what you think some other entity intended. But if I'm gonna die tomorrow, even if God intended it, I'm gonna disagree, okay? I'll go with science and I'll try to save my life, and we can argue about it later when I'm still alive.
Yep, I'm not interested in arguing about it. Move forward, science. Ignore the religious people. They don't matter in this context at all, regardless of what the religion is. All right, well, let's take our final break, and when we come back, Sarah Palin really wants to pound into your heads that having sex is not okay. We've got that story and more when we come back.
Okay, I'm obsessed with Twitch today. So somebody said, we see that colloidal silver lining joke, Cenk. Well done. Look, how do I not love Twitch? Okay, by the way, just here for the free drinks, gave another 1,000 bits. And here new subs, Midnight Q, Lou BSF, Momo from NC, Tucero, Dallas Kasha, all those wonderful new signups. YouTube, where you at, man? Where you at? Let me see some signups. It's so easy on YouTube. Just hit that join button below. So good. You know you want to do it. In fact, to pull on Alex Jones, if you don't hit the join button, you die. I'm kidding. You don't die. It's totally optional. Okay. Kier writes in the member section, he's had a change of heart about eating pork. Ooh, too soon. But by the way, I mean, you get the pork from the pig and you get the heart from the pig. Either way, pig ain't around. Let's just keep it real, right? But we are. So Theater Goddess says congressional rules are useless when both parties are benefiting from breaking them. Since Congress gets to police itself, rules don't get enforced when they can be weaponized to screw with the other party. Yep. I am Sox says when enough politicians get into crypto and NFTs, we're all going to die. Because if you thought they made a lot of money and did a lot of sketchy things on insider trading at the stock market, my God, if they're doing Bitcoin and NFTs, I am Sox is right. We're all in a lot of trouble. the dragon who says knee said, just got back from my booster appointment, and now my 5G is coming in fast as lightning. The funny thing is, if you say that on a right-wing show, they will literally believe you. Amazing, amazing. All right. Back to the insider trading story. Chicago Ganai said, gee, if you already know what's going to happen, every bet's a sure thing, eh? Pretty much how it works, yep. And Warata Dragon said, isn't he also, about Alex Jones, isn't he also in a fight over child support? No wonder he doesn't want that info made public. And that's, by the way, probably why it got leaked. One of those lawyers who had their hands on it was like, oh, this guy's claiming he's poor? Please, no, give us that money. And they're right.
Okay, I got to jump in. What a dead
I knew you were going to jump in. That's why I paused.
Thank you for bringing that up because I'd forgotten about that. Pay your damn child support, you piece of crap. Jeez, wow. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, he just can't get any worse. I mean, apparently he's got hundreds of millions of dollars. And every day on the show, he pretends he's going broke. There are real shows that have financial issues, okay? And he's there lying through his teeth. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. We got a hype train going on Twitch. Yo, choo. Join it if you can, twitch.tv/TYT. Casper.
Let's do it.
All those things that have to do with privacy and sex, the liberals, not the conservatives, are the ones who pound after that.
Fascinating usage of the word pound when making that argument. Former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin is accusing Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of trying to entice Americans to engage in more sexual activity. Obviously, none of that is true. That is complete and utter nonsense. And she should have been a little more careful with, how she decided to share that message or that perspective. Now, this comes as a pretty delayed response to AOC claiming that a lot of the Republican men who come after her, to criticize her are usually pretty furious at the fact that they can't sleep with her. And that has upset conservatives. They're still talking about it, which blows my mind. And the conversation really started with Steve Cortez on Twitter arguing this in regard to a photo of AOC vacationing in Florida with her boyfriend. If leftists like AOC actually thought mandates and masking worked, they wouldn't be frolicking in free Florida. And then number two, her guy is showing his gross pale male meat. The dude is weird about feet. So he calls out AOC's boyfriend's feet. All right, now AOC shot him down, and in her response, God, I don't care about any of this. If Republicans are mad they can't date me, they can just say that instead of projecting their sexual frustrations onto my boyfriend's feet, you creepy weirdos. All right, but I want to get back to Sarah Palin, don't you know? Where did she get that, like, I don't know, that AOC or anyone in the Democratic Party is like trying to get people to have more sex? And also, stop talking about it from like your, like this moral high ground. Like, take care of your own home, girlfriend. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're worried about sex out of wedlock or, all of that stuff. Tend to your own home. That's all I'll say about that.
Okay, we got more of Sarah Palin, right? Because I think the video is hilarious. So yeah, look, let's, in the school of keeping it real, why was Sarah Palin popular? Two reasons. One was she was a socialist in Alaska, naturalized more of the oil and gave out checks to her citizens. The other reason is in Republican circles, they thought she was hot. So now she's complaining, oh my God, can you believe the Democrats are sexualizing people? Are you serious? Come on, give it a rest. And for Republicans claiming that no, we cared, we weren't paying attention to that at all. Sure, buddy. You remember your private conversations, right wingers? You remember those? Keep it real.
All right, let's hear more from Sarah Palin.
It amazes me, though, her and other liberals, socialists even, their ability to deflect from what the issues truly are. And here, her obsession with at least suggestions of always gender and sex even. It, I truly believe that there are enough Americans who get it and understand what her tactic is, and that is to deflect from what the real issues are. But take this issue, though, with her suggestion of dating and attraction to someone and blaming her failures on that obsession with sex. Look how the liberals, Rachel, want to pound that into the public's head, that advertising who is attracted to who, what people do in the privacy of their own bedrooms, all those things that have to do with privacy and sex. The liberals, not the conservatives, are the one who pound after that. And obviously, it's a tactic so that she doesn't have to be held accountable. It sounds like she hasn't been held accountable for much, maybe in her entire life, so she does not have that foundation of accountability and that public service heart that is so necessary in order to serve well and be accountable.
Does anyone understand a word she says? You know you don't understand it if you're right winger, because I tried. I watched a couple of times. At one point, she said like dating and stuff like that, and she's blaming her failures on that. Wait, when did she blame her failures on dating? What are you talking about?
Just making things up.
You remember when Ron Artest changed his name to Meta World Peace?
I do.
Yeah, and then he changed his name when he went to go play ball in China to the Panda's Friend. And Ron's a really good guy with a good heart, but that was a little silly, right? But if Sarah Palin had like a Ron Artest kind of name, it would be Word Salad Palin. If she just throws out words, a pound dating failure, it's really the liberals and not the conservatives. And that's why, date, sex and pound and that and ha. And Republicans, since they don't care about policy, they don't care about ideas, they don't care about complete sentences, they're like, oh yeah, she's right, man. I like her, she's hot. No, she's making the point that you're not supposed to be obsessed. I think she's trying to make the point that you're not obsessed with, shouldn't be obsessed with that. Hilarious. Every part of it's hilarious. But if the substantive point at the end was, can you believe the liberals are invading the privacy of your bedroom? Are you serious? My whole life, Republicans have said, now remember, we don't want big government, but here's what you can and can't do in your bedroom, okay? No, you can't have gay partners, you can't love gay people, you can't do this, you can't do that. In fact, a guy who worked in the Trump administration, it's that recent, Ken Cuccinelli, tried to outlaw oral and anal sex in Virginia. Literal, I'm not kidding, it's literal. He's like, no one's allowed to have oral sex. I do not approve of it. It ain't liberals, it's conservatives who've been trying to run our sex lives the whole time because they're perverts, they're repressed, and they love big government oppression.
All right, I do want to fit in one more story, so let's get to it. This is not a good look, so. A UK energy company is now apologizing after sending out a tone-deaf blog post on ways to conserve energy in an effort to save money on energy bills for consumers. Now, the UK is facing increased energy prices and higher costs of living, much like everyone else. And the OPEC plus cartel has a lot to do with it. Remember, they are intentionally inflating the cost of oil, which is necessary to fuel our cars, to power things, to provide energy to people. And what they do is they limit oil production in an effort to increase prices as much as possible so they can recoup the money that they lost in the beginning of the pandemic. They game the system and they're able to do it, which is why I would argue it's better to rely on renewable energies. But nonetheless, SSE Energy Services, owned by OVO Energy, thought that it was helping its consumers by sending out tips on reducing energy costs, but it ended up insulting them instead. On a now deleted SSE webpage, which offered tips on keeping warm in winter without turning up the heating, SSE suggested 10 simple and cost-effective ways to stay warm and keep bills down. And what did those tips include? Well, why don't we take a look at this, okay? So number 8, find extra heat. You don't always need to rely on your central heating to stay warm. Here are some lesser known ways, because we're all morons, to find extra warmth from other sources. Open your curtains when it's sunny to warm your home naturally. Keep your oven open. Sounds a little dangerous if you have kids or pets. After you finish cooking, just be careful if there are pets or small children around. And then finally, Cenk, just have a cuddle with your pets and loved ones to stay cozy. So people didn't like that. And so there was backlash, and they have since apologized and taken the blog post down. But I do want to just quickly note that while it's easy to get mad at this company for putting out this insulting list of tips, like the heart of the problem is what we're experiencing with high gas prices here in the United States. It's the fact that you have oil producing countries intentionally manipulating the market.
Yeah. So other tips they included were doing the hula hoop and jumping jacks. I'm not kidding. That was on the list.
I mean, it does work. It does work. I did a HIIT workout today. Lots of jumping jacking happening, and it worked. Got very hot.
I'm going to refrain from commenting on that.
I know. Let's move on.
Okay. This is what I think the kids call late stage capitalism. So, you can't afford your bills because private oil companies have artificially jacked up the prices of oil and gas, and the politicians have totally let them and not protected you at all. That's okay. Open your oven and put your head in it.
I know, it's absolutely insane. The advice included wearing extra layers to keep warm. And yes, as you mentioned, by the way, cleaning the house, challenging the kids to a hula hoop contest, or doing a few star jumps. I guess that's what they call it in the UK, star jumps instead of jumping jacks. And also the contingent of the blog was poorly judged in their apology, they say, and unhelpful. We are embarrassed and sincerely apologize. We understand how difficult the situation will be for many of our consumers this year. I mean, it would be nice if the government stepped in and assisted people with being able to afford their insanely expensive energy bills. So for instance, they're expected to, let me give you the numbers. This is insane. British consumers will pay roughly $1,075 more to heat and light their homes this year. And that's according to Bank of America. Wholesale European gas prices have jumped by 400% over the previous year, and electricity prices have increased by 300%, according to this bank's analysis. The increases have been driven by cold weather, nuclear plant outages in France, and reduced gas flow from Russia, an OPEC country, of course.
Yeah, so look, do something useful instead. And yeah, sure, give tips on insulating your houses because that's a huge issue in the UK, and I think they do that. But fight for policy, fight for real changes to the prices. Don't ironically gaslight us. But I will give them a tiny bit of credit because the apology was pretty good when they were like, "We're embarrassed. We've embarrassed ourselves," and that is true. And then give it to the British to frame it right. We're out of time now, but in the post game, guys, the bonus episode for just the members, you're gonna love it. There's a new idea that the right wing has for curing COVID. Well, you're in luck because it's already inside your body. Yes, they really think you should pee inside your own mouth. The details are hilarious and horrifying. Just when you thought there is no bottom, that there's a bottom to that barrel, nope, there's no bottom. Keep looking down, and you'll see the more madness ahead. So tyt.com/join. Or if you're watching on YouTube, it's super easy. You just hit that join button below. All right, Anna, we have one other story too in the bonus episode, right?
Oh, the cutest cat story that you have ever known about. Do not miss it. It's my fave.
All right, all that, and you get to support wonderful progressive programming, fight for change, and get the truth out there. The members literally do that every day. So tyt.com/join, or hit the join button below. Much love, guys, and members, we'll see you in a minute.
While the Young Turks, the Friday show is gonna be awesome. We're gonna help us over here. Drop it. We became the first ever daily online web television show.
No, the Constitution is the very core of America. The fact that we don't spy on American citizens